Hello, Chandni Chawla. Welcome to the channel Kahanis Golden Bytes. Thank you for taking out your time to be on the channel, Chandni.
Hi, Joby. Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this channel. I'm really happy to be talking to you.
Thank you once again, Chandni. So, Chandni, for the benefit of our viewers, may I please request you to give a little background about yourself, Chandni?
Yes, absolutely. I am a practicing lawyer based out of Bombay. I practice in the Bombay High Court. I completed my law in 2017 from ILS Pune. Subsequent to that, I worked as a researcher in Delhi for 1 year. And then I practiced law in Delhi with a human rights lawyer for a couple of months. And then I moved to London for 1 year to do my master's, an LLM, which is a master's in law in human rights, justice, and conflict. I finished my master's in 2019. And since then, I have been in Bombay and I am practicing criminal law at the Bombay High Court. Yeah.
So, that's a lot, Chandni. That's a lot. And Chandni, if I may just, take that one at a time. So,
Sure.
Chandni, you studied your law and then you started, as a researcher here in Delhi, right?
Yes, yes.
And so, Chandni, any specific reason for choosing your field? Because you went for your master's also in the same field, is it, where you did your internship or research? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, any particular driver for that, Chandni?
So I always knew, at least when I was studying, that I wanted to practice law.
Mhm.
But after graduating, I got an offer to be a researcher for 1 year. And I thought that will really suit my purpose because in that 1 year, I can really decide whether I want to pursue academics or whether I want to practice. And I thought that 1 year would also give me time to decide if I want to do a master's after that. So that's why I decided to take up that 1 year of research. I spent that 1 year understanding how academia in India works when it comes to the law and preparing for my master's. And that 1 year gave me a lot of time to understand my interest in law also. And that is why I was able to apply for a master's program of my choice and go for a master's program. Secondly, once you start law, a practice of law, it's difficult to leave in between because you somehow started to build your clientele, you somehow started to understand things better, and I didn't want that gap to come when I started practice. So that is why I thought it really fit in really well that I do research for a year, go for my masters, and then come to India and then practice law here.
Okay. So, Chandni, you went overseas to
Yes.
do your master's, right?
Yes.
Now, Chandni, after doing your masters, had the exposure, the experience of being in a developed world, in
Absolutely.
London, which is very different from at this point in time from India. So that would have also given you a different perspective, and just begs the question in my mind is that, Chandni, you could have picked up thereafter working for a law firm, a multinational law firm, anywhere in the world,
Right.
and you could have earned, if I may just use the word, a lot more money possibly,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
and then you decided to come back to India, right?
Yes.
So you're smiling and I'm frowning here, and could you just go about just sharing a little bit as to what was the driver? Why did you decide not to practice in the space of multinational law, etc., in terms of the rest of the world, and come back to India? What was the driver there, Chandni?
I was smiling because this is a question my father asked me a lot when I was studying abroad, that why do you want to come back and not live in a place which is much more developed? But Joby, as I said, I did my master's in human rights law, right? And I constantly felt a drive, especially throughout my career, throughout my years where I was studying, that India is facing a grave violation of human rights. And if I have gone abroad, gained a significant experience, learned from peers from all over the world, and gained an experience at understanding how international human rights law functions, then I don't want to put my energy to use there. I rather want to come back to India and use that skill set over here in practicing human rights. And that was one of my biggest drivers to come back to India, because while I was there, I was reading news reports every day of grave human rights violations taking place in India. The marginalized community is not being treated well, they're not being given their rights. And I really thought that, if I have gained such an experience, why should I uh, put it to use over there working for maybe their communities or working with an international human rights organization? And when you work with an international human rights organization, you're actually working from much higher, and the impact is much less, at least according to my experience. And I wanted to work at the grassroots level where I'm able to meet people who I'm serving, rather than being abroad, comfortable in a place where I can't see what I'm doing, where I can't see the impact of my work. And I think this was one of the biggest reasons for me to come back. I get the money aspect. I would have definitely earned more had I decided to stay back there, work for a law firm or work for a human rights organization. But I think that wouldn't have given me the job satisfaction which coming back to India has given me, and working with the communities around me has given me. So I think this was the biggest reason for me to come back. And somehow, when I was applying, I was always prepared, and I knew that I wanted to come back to India. I knew I wouldn't be earning a lot of money, because when you start practicing law in the initial years, you don't make a lot of money. So I knew that's going to happen. And that was one of the reasons I decided that I wouldn't go for a master's without a scholarship, because I did not want a huge loan lingering in my mind when I am abroad and wondering how I'm going to pay back that loan when I come back. So I think I really thought through all of this really well before I decided to go for my master's.
Lovely.
Yeah.
So you got a scholarship, is that right? You went
Yes.
on a scholarship?
Yes.
Excellent. So Chandni, you went on a scholarship. Could you share a little bit about how you went about that, Chandni?
So I got a scholarship from the university where I went. It was an internal scholarship, specifically in the law department at the School of Oriental and African Studies. And the process of applying was particularly very hard, and a lot of people really struggle with scholarships. And I think people should really start applying early and really look out. I applied for 22 scholarships and I landed up on one. And there are many scholarships available, whether there are in India, whether there are it's by the government where they are going to, so the UK government, the Indian government, and university specific scholarships. So yeah, it is a particularly time consuming process, but it's definitely worth the try. Yeah,
So that's a big, long process, and
absolutely.
it takes time, right?
It takes time. I started 1 year in advance, and you need 1 year to apply for your masters and your scholarships in total.
Thank you for that, Chandni. So Chandni, when you speak about human rights and the field that you've chosen, you're not particularly against, if I may just use words very loosely here, I'm using, is that against a particular government or a community or a section of society. You're basically trying to represent uh, you know the marginalized, wherever or whatever background they are from, right, in terms of human rights. Is that correct?
Well,
No. No.
not particularly correct. It I do not agree with the ideologies and demands of the current government we are with.
Mhm.
But that doesn't mean that I support all the other governments.
Right,
I
right.
mean, human rights
Mm,
violations have been taking place in India since a long period of time. But
mm,
I feel they are particularly grave under this current government, and the kinds of violations have also become very blatant under this particular government. And I think that is why I really wanted to come back and decide to work here at this point of time, where we are facing a huge crisis, where democracy is in shambles at this particular time, if you ask me, my experience personally. And talking about representing the marginalized communities, that there are various communities which need help at this point of time. And by practicing criminal law, I represent one sort of a group of people who need help with the criminal law per se. Whereas you can practice human rights by doing a variety of work. You can be a land rights lawyer, you can be a constitutional lawyer, but I am particularly at this point of time focused on criminal law, and I also work in the area of gender justice. That is another area where I specialize in and what I focused on at my masters.
lovely. So, Chandni, let me ask you a hypothetical question here. Is that should the government change? Okay, should the government change and issues carry on? Okay, in terms of human rights, would you still, just purely hypothetical, would you still carry on your practice?
Absolutely. I think my answer is yes to both the questions, that the government definitely needs to change and I would still carry on working in this area.
Okay. So, Chandni, you know, when you bring across gender, you're talking criminal law here. Let me
Right.
ask you a very stereotype kind of question, and and I'm purposely asking this, is that being a lady, you know
Yeah.
in the environment that you are working in, do you face any challenges just because of your gender, or is that an advantage because given this situation, are there fewer people in that space where there are some advantages that come to you? Is that what are your views on that?
I don't think there are any advantages which come to me naturally just because I'm a woman. And I do feel the challenges that I face are much higher as compared to men. These challenges are very subtle. So a person observing me might not be able to point that out. But I, being a woman, can understand that probably the other side's lawyer is a man and he's pressing a point particularly more because I am on the other side, being not just a woman but a young lawyer who's just entered the field. So there are two levels of disadvantages which I feel come to me. uh, it's I mean, as I said, it's very subtle, and there are fewer women doing the kind of work I do, especially criminal law. I mean, there
True.
will be
True.
women who have entered the workforce, the legal workforce, they work for law firms, but
Yes.
there are not many women doing this kind of work at this point of time. Compared to the past, definitely we are many more, but if you ask me, we are still very few, and the numbers do need to grow, and the field really needs to open its arms and accept more women in the arena of law, the practice of law.
So, Chandni, now that you've been in India for some time, you've come back and practicing law once again on the ground, from a
Right.
researcher. Now you're on the ground, you're fighting those battles on a day-to-day basis. Any regrets on having coming back to India? What did I do? I should have stayed back and earned a lot. I mean, I would have had a more
No,
comfortable.
absolutely no regrets. I am very happy coming back to India, and I think that is one of the major reasons I wanted to come back, and I'm doing the work I do, and no regrets. Absolutely, I do miss the life which I had abroad for a year. It was much freer. The challenges were much less as compared to the challenges which I'm facing right now, but I don't regret coming back. Yeah.
Chandni Chawla, thank you so much for taking out your time to be on the channel. Once again, for your views, thank you very much.
I'm very happy to be a part of this channel. Yeah. Thank you for
Thank you.
inviting me once again. Thank you, Joe.